Good morning, everyone. Here's chapter 4 of A Dog's Promise. Hope everything's going well for you. The little girl with the black hair took Lacey over to meet the two adults. The girl's parents, a part of my mind, decided. Mostly I was just trying to catch a glimpse of Lacey in the little girl's arms. For some reason, this felt different, more threatening than when Eva carried one of us. Lacey was just as desperate. When she was lowered to the ground, she ignored her dark-haired girl and ran straight over to my cage and stuck her nose through the bars to touch mine. "Lacey!" the little girl called, leading her parents over and snatching my Lacey back up. Newman and his family were returning, and I saw him stiffen at the sight of the little girl's family. The boy regarded Newman curiously. Hello?" said the man with the dark hair. Newman reacted oddly, ignoring dark hair man, and he leaned to pull me out of my cage, hopefully so I could be with Lacey. "Hello," the older lady replied to dark hair man. "Are you adopting a new puppy too?" "I'm getting Lacey," the black-haired girl saying. I decided there were two separate families, black-haired girl and her mother and father, and Newman, a boy, and an older woman who didn't seem to be the boy's mother. Though the two families were both human, they smelled slightly different from one another. Newman picked me up and turned away from the conversation with dark-haired man. "Are you coming, Mom?" he asked after he took a few steps. An odd tension flowed through Newman's hands as they held me. Nice speaking to you," the older lady, who Newman called Mom, said to the black-hair family before she hurried after us. She was frowning at Newman. He waited as she caught up to us. "What in the world was that?" Mom asked in low tones. "I've never seen you be so rude." Held against Newman's chest, I couldn't see Lacey, could barely smell her. I squirmed, and he patted me reassuringly. "Don't you know?" Newman replied. "He's one of the robo-farmers, trying to put us out of business." The boy ran ahead to the side of a car. Inside the vehicle, I could see another younger boy smiling at me. "Wait!" Little Ava was dashing up, and Newman turned. "Can I say goodbye to Bailey?" I was lowered so that I was nose to nose with Ava. "I love you, Bailey. You are such a good puppy. We can't keep every dog we rescue because that would be foster failure. So we have to say goodbye, but I will always remember you. I hope you see me again sometime." I wagged at my name, Bailey, and at the kiss Ava put on my nose. Then I was in the car. Why? What were we doing? What happened to Lacey? The younger boy gathered me to him. He was essentially a smaller copy of the first boy. Same dark hair and light eyes. Same smell of bread and butter. I was so anxious I whimpered. "Don't worry, little guy. Everything is okay," the younger boy whispered. I was intimidated, but he rubbed his face on mine so fondly I was charmed into licking his cheeks. Everyone was riding into the car with me. "Can I drive?" the older boy asked. "Or maybe we should just try to survive the trip," the younger boy replied. "You can drive when the whole family's not in the car, Grant," Newman said. "I don't know why it's called a learner's permit when you won't permit me to learn," he complained. The car started moving. "What was the deal with the Asian dude?" the older boy asked. Newman shook his head. "That's not the way to answer the question. His being Asian has nothing to do with it at all." "What happened?" the boy holding me wanted to know. "Dad acted weird," older boy explained. "He was rude," Mom interjected. Newman sighed. "We have nothing against Chinese Americans. What we do have is a problem with where he works. They're buying up the farms and replacing the workers with drone harvesters. They're running down prices so we can barely make a living. Meanwhile, workers who used to bring home a decent wage can't feed their families." "Okay, I get it. Sorry," older boy mumbled, looking away. "Your father isn't angry at you, Grant. It's the situation," Mom said pointedly. "Isn't that right, Chase?" Newman grunted. The younger boy had me on my back, was tickling me and letting me bite his fingers. "I'm going to name him Cooper," he announced. "That's a dumb name," older boy observed. "That's enough, Grant," Newman said. Older boy's name was Grant. That's one thing I learned over the next several days. His name was Grant, and the younger boy was Burke. The woman was mostly Grandma, so I stopped thinking of her as Mom. Newman, though, was more of a challenge because he couldn't seem to get names straight. He called Grandma Mom, and she called him Chase, and the most confusing, the boys called him Dad, which was what Ava called Sam Dad. It was too much for a dog, so I began thinking of Newman as Chase Dad. "We're all men, Dad?" and everyone addressed me as Cooper. I had been Bailey when I was with Lacey, and now I was Cooper and was without her. I was happy to be surrounded by people who loved me, but a part of me was always waiting for Lacey to show up. Thinking of her made me feel oddly hungry, hungry even after I'd filled my belly with dinner. I was burdened with a persistent, empty ache. When Burke wasn't lying in bed, he was sitting in a chair that moved swiftly from place to place with the rest of his hands on his two wheels. Sometimes one of the other family members would stand behind Burke and push. Burke wanted me in his lap, and I discovered he really couldn't touch me otherwise, though he would bend over and try, his fingers wagging in the air. He taught me to climb up on a low, soft stool, and from there to leap into his lap. Up, cute Cooper, he called, slapping his thighs and laughing when I complied. Once I was there, Burke would cuddle me and I would chew on his face, the same sort of affection flowing through my jaws as when I held Lacey's leg in my mouth. If Cooper is Burke's dog, how come I have to do the house training? Grant asked me. Why do you think? Dad replied. Several times a day, Grant would take me outside, sometimes in a rush if I were about to squat in the house. He would feed me treats. I'm the fun boy in the family. You'll see. Burke says you're a working dog. But when you're older, I'll take you on hikes, throw the ball for you. You'll see, Grant whispered to me as he gave me a treat. I loved Grant. Grant wasn't always home, and neither was Chase Dad, but Graham and Burke were. School, Grant would say, and then we'd be running out the door. I learned to expect that I'd be hearing time to get to work from Chase Dad, or something similar with the same tones in his voice. And when it would be just Graham and Burke, let's start your French lesson, Grandma might say to Burke's loud groans. I would roll on my back or jump on a toy or run around the room to make sure they knew there were plenty of alternatives to what they were doing, which was to sit quietly and gaze at an odorless, flickering object, make small clicking noises by tapping their fingers, and generally ignoring the fact that they had a dog in the house. They didn't even get up to follow me when I pushed through the dog door, trotted down the ramp to sniff around and mark my territory outside. I wondered where Lacey was. I did not understand how I could be so certain we would be together always, and then see her pulled away from me, a little black-haired girl. Gradually I came to understand that while I lived with everyone in the family, I had a special responsibility to Burke. It was Burke who fed me, setting my food bowl on a shelf. He would reach from his chair, and I would access my climbing up on a wooden box. I slept on Burke's bed in a small downstairs room. Grandma had a bigger room downstairs, and Grant and Chase Dad had rooms with beds in them upstairs. It was Burke who taught me to respond to commands. Come, sit, stay, lie down. Stay was the hardest. Everyone in the family loved me and played with me, of course, but I had a sure sense that Burke needed me. He cared enough to teach me things, and being needed felt more important than anything, engendering a bond between us as strong as the attachment I felt to Lacey. Sometimes I would gaze at him in sheer wonder that I had my own boy. I loved everyone in the family, but within a short time it was Burke who centered my world. Burke, who was my purpose. Where we lived was called the farm. There was a barn and a fenced-in area with an old goat named Judy, where she chewed distractedly on grass but never threw up. I sometimes approached the fence, and Judy, the old goat, and I would stare at each other. I marked the fence, but the goat didn't show me the courtesy of sniffing the area. I wasn't sure what an old goat was for. Grandma spent a lot of time speaking to her, but goats can't talk any better than dogs. Judy was not invited into the house, so I decided I was the favorite. I was allowed to run around on the farm, but my sense of obligation to my boy kept me from going much past a large pond with worthless ducks swimming around in it. I just needed to know where he was at all times. Come, sit, stay, lie down. I had work, and it made me happy. I also had a box of toys. Whenever I felt the mood growing stagnant, I would plunge my face into the box and pull out a ball or some other object. Most of them were rubber, because the cloth ones I shredded, and I ate. The only item I didn't care for in my toy box was something Grant gave me. It's a nylon bone for him to chew. It's good for his teeth, Grant advised Burke. He would thrust this odorless, tasteless, hard nylon bone at me. Get the bone. Want the bone. Grant would shake it, and I would pretend interest, because, I felt sorry for him. After a time, I didn't need the wooden box in order to reach the food bowl. You're a big dog now, Cooper, Burke declared. I decided big dog was the same as good dog. Or maybe not, because around the same time my boy started saying, "Big dog." He began speaking with the obvious intent that I was to do something in response, something harder than sit or even stay. "Let's do some training, Cooper," Burke announced every day, and I would know it was time for me to pay attention to what was always a bewildering set of spoken commands. There was a loop of rope on the door of what I learned was a refrigerator. Burke shook it open. "Open," he said. He kept shaking it until I just had to have it in my mouth. Growling playfully, I backed up, the door swinging on its hinges and wonderful food odors ghosting out on cold currents. Burke gave me a treat. Open meant tug the rope and get a treat. Leave it was very confusing because it started with a treat. This went under a heavy glove on the couch. I recognized that glove from when Bert and Grant would throw a ball to each other in the yard. A game I loved because when one of the boys missed, I would leap on it, and then it was my ball. Burke held a chicken treat under the glove and just sat there, even though we both knew where the chicken was. Finally decided I needed to take the initiative. I wanted to move the glove away. "Leave it!" he snapped at me. I was utterly baffled. What did that mean? I stared at the glove, drooling, and went for it. "Leave it! No, leave it!" No. What did he think a chicken treat was for? "Leave it," he commanded again, this time handing me a different treat, a liver-flavored one. I liked the chicken, preferred it, but with this madness going on, I decided liver was the best I was going to be able to do. After several repetitions of "leave it," I decided to wait him out, and he gave me more liver. It made absolutely no sense, but as long as it ended in a treat with me, it was fine. I decided to cheat by turning away from the glove as soon as he said "leave it." Treat. Then the morsel was under the glove on the floor, and Burke was no longer holding it. I calculated I could move the glove and gobble the chicken away easily, but when he said "leave it," I almost couldn't help myself turning away from the glove automatically. Treat. Eventually I decided that whenever my boy said "leave it," I should ignore whatever had my attention and focus on his hand, which was much more a reliable source of treats. Those delicious morsels were not the best part, though. It was affection pouring from Burke as he said, "Good dog, Cooper." I could do anything for him. Burke loved me, and I loved Burke. Pull was easy. I marched steadily forward with the rope on my harness and looped back to the chair. But pull had variations that took me many days and many treats to learn. "Watch this," Burke said to Grant. "Okay, Cooper, pull right." That meant tug in one direction. Pull left. That meant tug the other way. This was hard work for a dog, but Burke's praise, plus Burke's chicken, made it all worthwhile. "What's that for?" Grant asked. "Like if I'm having trouble in the snow, Cooper can pull me." "You're not going to try to go out in the snow. That's just plain stupid," Grant replied. "Not deep snow, but even if it's shoveled, sometimes it gets tough to get traction. What else have you taught him?" "Okay, this is the best one." Grunting, Burke lifted himself out of his chair, sliding onto the couch, and then, his arms out, rolling onto the floor. I watched tensely as he crawled with his arms into the middle room. "Okay, Cooper, steady." I went immediately to the boy's side. He reached up and seized my harness with both hands. "Assist." He gripped me with one hand and helped push himself with the other, as I slowly dragged him across the floor to his chair. "Steady," Burke commanded again. I held completely still, taking his weight as he scrambled to a seat. "See? Cooper can get me back into the chair." "Cool, do it again," Grant said. Though I had just managed to get him into the chair, Burke fell out of it a second time. I did not understand what had changed for him lately, because it seemed like he could barely manage to stay in the thing now that we had learned assist. This time, when Burke called me to him, Grant stepped over to the chair and dragged it to the kitchen, which was all the way across the room. "Why'd you do that?" Burke demanded. Grant laughed. "Come on, Grant, bring it back. Let's see if Cooper can figure it out. Like Dad always says, an easy challenge is no challenge at all." "So you're somehow saying this is good for me? Or maybe good for the dog?" Burke was quiet for a moment. "Okay, Cooper, assist." I did not know what to do. How could I do assist when the chair wasn't there? Burke pulled on my harness until I was facing the kitchen. "Assist, Cooper." I took a tentative step forward. "Yes," Burke praised. "Good dog." Did he want me to drag him into the kitchen? This was a different assist than we'd been doing, feeling more like pull left, but I remembered how leave it went from "don't try to eat what's under the glove" to ignore what's on the floor, even if it smells delicious. Perhaps training meant everything in my life would keep changing. I started moving steadily toward the kitchen. "Yes, see?" He figured it out. Grant waited in the kitchen with his arms folded. Burke was panting a little by the time we got there. Good dog, Cooper. Treat. Grant picked up Burke's chair. How about this? He carried the chair into the living room and up the stairs. Can he get you up here? Grant called down with a taunting laugh. Burke just lay on the floor. He seemed sad. I nudged him with my nose, not understanding. Okay, Cooper, he whispered finally. Something like anger was pushing the sad out of him. Let's do it. Does he remind you of another character in one of the other books? Does me. Maybe we'll talk about it today. Hopefully, you guys will all be able to meet for our Friday meeting today at 11. Hope to see you.